Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're exploring something honestly pretty groundbreaking. It's a conceptual framework that might just completely change how you perceive your own physical body and the exact words you use to describe it. Okay, let's dive into this. We're stepping into the fascinating, kind of mind-bending world of the Codex Vivant. I want you to imagine this intricate, meticulously designed atlas. But instead of mapping out continents and oceans, this atlas maps out the deep, undeniable, and honestly often hidden connections between our raw biology, our flesh, our nerves, our cells, and the language we use every single day. If you've ever felt this profound physical sensation that language just seemingly falls short of describing, or if you've ever found yourself wondering how our bodies actually generate our thoughts, well, you're in the exact right place. We are going to unpack a massive intellectual architecture today. What if biology and linguistics were just one and the same reality? I want you to really sit with that for a second. It sounds almost counterintuitive, doesn't it? I mean, for centuries, conventional science and philosophy have basically taught us to separate the mind from the body. We treat the physical reality of our flesh, our heartbeat, our nervous system as this one distinct biological machine. And then, on the flip side, we treat the abstract human capacity of speech, language, and thought as something entirely separate, almost like software running on top of the hardware. But the Codex Vivant challenges that exact assumption head-on. It asks us to consider that every word we speak is fundamentally a biological event. And every biological event, it has the absolute potential to become a spoken word. So typically we divide human existence into these two completely distinct camps. On one side, we have the body, le corps. This is the physical realm. This is our raw biology, physical sensation, the actual physiological territory that we inhabit, right? It's tangible, it's measurable, it's immediate. And on the other side, we have language, le langage, verbal expression, linguistics, all that intellectual architecture we build just to communicate our inner world to other people. Usually we treat these as totally separate domains. Think about it. You go to a doctor for the physical side, and you go to a therapist or a writer or a linguist for the verbal side. We treat the territory and the architecture as if they're literally built from completely different materials. So the crucial point is, they're not separate at all. The foundational axiom of the Codex Vivant states that the body and language are simply two registers of one and the same reality. Guys, this is a massive paradigm shift. What it means is that a physical tension in your chest and that specific word you use to describe your anxiety, they aren't two different things. They are the exact same phenomenon expressing itself on two different frequencies. Basically, every physical sensation has, or desperately seeks out, a linguistic counterpart. Our verbal expressions are just so deeply rooted in our somatic, biological existence. The Codex argues that there is a singular truth to the human experience, and biology and language are simply two different lenses through which we view it. And, well, because this connection between flesh and word is so incredibly vast and largely uncharted, a simple dictionary just wouldn't even begin to cut it. The author explicitly states, this codex is not a glossary, it's an atlas. Now, a glossary is just a static list of words and definitions. It's kind of dead text. An atlas, however, that's a living map. It is a dynamic intellectual architecture designed to build actual conceptual bridges. It allows for spatial navigation. So it doesn't just list words, it maps the precise coordinates where a physical sensation actually meets a verbal expression. It shows the pathways, the borders, and the terrain of our lived experience, really allowing us to navigate the sheer complexity of what it actually means to be a conscious biological entity. To properly navigate this atlas, we really need to understand its structural anatomy. And let me tell you, it is incredibly precise. We're going to go through some key numbers that define this system, starting right here with the number 38. The Codex Vivant is built upon 38 original terms forged by what the overarching framework calls the Prism of Odysseys. Now, these aren't just your everyday conversational words. No, they are highly specific, original conceptual tools created specifically to name realities that previously had no name. They form the absolute bedrock of this entire intellectual architecture. From that core foundation, the whole system expands outward into 19 source extensions, usually represented as the Roman numeral XIX. These extensions dramatically broaden the framework. They take those foundational concepts and apply them to much more complex intersections of biology, thought, and society. So this really shows us that the Codex isn't just some closed loop, right? It's a generative system that scales all the way up from the microscopic biology of a single cell straight to the macroscopic behavior of entire civilizations and shared consciousness. Next up, we have the number 7. The Codex utilizes 7 etymological languages. This is absolutely fascinating because it treats words not just as sounds, but as historical artifacts. It's like the Codex acts as an archaeology of the signal.
By tracing the deep, ancient etymological history of these concepts across 7 different languages, the author shows exactly how humanity has historically encoded raw biological phenomena right into speech over millennia. A word is basically treated as an archive of human physical experience, perfectly preserved through time.
And finally, we land heavily on the number 4. There are 4 epistemic levels. Now, I want you to pay very close attention here, because this is absolutely critical to the integrity of the whole project. When you're out there blending biology, linguistics, and philosophy, it is dangerously easy to veer off into pseudoscience or pure mysticism. You know what I mean? So these 4 levels serve as the rigorous scientific compass for navigating the entire codex. They ensure that whoever is reading always knows exactly where they stand on the spectrum between hard, measurable science and expansive theoretical philosophy. Now, what's really interesting here is the concept of a semantic foundation, which is referred to in the original text as a fondateur. Look at this beautiful definition. It's an act of naming that brings into existence something that did not yet have an address in common language. I want you to think about that for a second with a real sense of academic reverence. In this framework, naming something isn't just slapping a label on it. It's literally an act of creation. When you experience a really complex biological or psychological state, say a specific type of nervous system dysregulation, or this unique state of flow, and you finally give it a precise name, you're giving a home to an unnamed reality. You anchor it, you make the invisible visible, and more importantly, actionable. But to ensure this powerful act of naming doesn't lose its grounding in reality, the author applies a remarkably strict epistemic legend. Let's quickly walk through it. Level A is established, meaning it's strictly validated by scientific consensus, like standard neurophysiology. Then level B is active research. These are phenomena currently being actively tested by science, like the emission of biophotons from cells. Level C is conceptual, so a coherent theoretical framework that organizes our thinking, unique to the Codex, but maybe not scientifically proven as a hard physical mechanism yet. And finally, level D is speculative, a serious philosophical hypothesis, but explicitly named as such. This matrix is just brilliant because it strictly prevents any confusion between established scientific facts and speculative philosophy. It maintains absolute intellectual hygiene. And this brilliantly illustrates where the entire architecture comes together, the epistemological grid of the Codex. You can see the structure perfectly mapped out. Down at the bottom, in the dark blue layer, we've got our level A biological foundations, things like cellular resting potentials at -70 millivolts. But as we move up, we scale into transdisciplinary active research in light blue, then up into the conceptual prism frameworks in gold, finally reaching the speculative metaphysical domains in purple, right at the top. But look closely to the right. There's an eye watching over it all. This is the active sentinel. The sentinel's rule is absolute. You must never, ever confuse a biological mechanism with an operative metaphor. Alignment in the system demands total clarity of status. You can explore the cosmos, for sure, but you have to keep your feet firmly planted on scientific ground. Let's move on and see how all of this builds into a single practical entry in the Codex. When you consult this atlas, you aren't just reading a flat definition. You are tracing an entire anatomy. Step 1, it maps the etymology, rooting the concept deep in ancient linguistic history. Step 2, it provides an exact, tailored definition within the specific framework of the prism. Step 3, it clearly states its epistemic level, so you immediately know right off the bat if you're reading about an established scientific fact or a conceptual framework. And step 4, it maps the connections and interoperability to other terms in the system. Every single entry is a node in this vast, interconnected network, allowing you to trace exactly how a biological state triggers a psychological concept, which then in turn influences a broader social dynamic. So what we're ultimately looking at here isn't just a static book or some finished thesis sitting on a shelf. It is a living, breathing intellectual architecture, destined to grow. The Codex Vivant is an ongoing, highly dynamic project of reconciliation. It gives us a structured, incredibly rigorous, and beautifully designed way to finally bridge the gap between the concrete, biological realities of our physical bodies and the boundless intellectual expressions of our minds. It suggests that if we can just properly map this connection, we can better regulate our nervous systems, we can communicate more authentically, and we can fundamentally change how we actually inhabit our own lives. As we wrap up this explainer today, I want you to ask yourself this deeply personal question. What physical sensations within you still lack a semantic address? Seriously, what bodily feelings, what hidden biological rhythms, or complex inner states are you carrying around right now that you simply do not have the words for yet? Because if the Codex Vivant teaches us anything, it's that once you find that precise semantic foundation, once you finally name the invisible, you gain the immense power to architect your own reality. So keep exploring, keep naming. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the incredible architecture of body and language.